First of all, you should be able to hear me. I'm kind of loud. If you're supposed to be recording me, you're going to have to be like a mobile recorder because I cannot stand to stand in one place. It drives me insane.
All right.
Like I said, I'm Coach Henderson. I teach AP European History. Her son's in my AP class. He'll tell you I'm an awful teacher.
Just keep it on his hand. Yeah.
I also teach an advanced World War II class that is junior and senior level only. And the reason we do it for juniors and seniors is one, you got to kind of have a background knowledge. And two, we don't cover things up. We just we teach it like as if you're an adult. So by the time you're a junior and senior, and if you get in that class, it's like a college class. So basically, I teach college level classes, sophomore, juniors, and seniors. And I have been here for a minute, 23 years. Anyway, so what I want to do and what I've done before in the past for Miss Cyprian and others is kind of give you guys an introduction. Give the light so I can actually see this. An introduction to the Holocaust. Now, in my World War II class, I spend about 6 days on this. And in that 6 days, it's everything. It's different than what you're used to. So most of you guys got a little bit of stuff on it. In that 6 days, what I will do is everything from basically all the way back to where the hatred for Jews began to explain, and then kind of go all through it. For you guys, not 6 days. Before I do that, let me explain two things to you because reality is you may not give a crap. And I really don't care. See, I'm a little different from them. Whether you want to learn it or not is 100% up to you. What you get out of a lesson, 100% up to you. It's like coaching. All right? If you don't listen to the coach because you think you know better, you'll eventually find out you don't. If you don't want to know it, tune it out. Go to that little happy place in your head where the rat runs in the wheel and the circus clowns play, and just look like you're paying attention. Up to you. The reality is, you are so far removed from what really is going on that it's sometimes hard to really see it. So one of the things I try to do is try to make it make sense to you and connect it to things that you might understand. And sometimes that's a little more difficult. But I started out with a really simple statement. And I was laughing earlier and I told him I could do the thing in German for you, but I thought it would make it a little more difficult. But I'll stick to the English today. Basically says where they burn books, they will also ultimately burn people. So it's this book. This guy, Heinrich Heine, writes this poem in 1820. So you go, when the hell's 1820? Okay, so it's 2019, so basically, how many years ago? 200 years ago, this guy writes a poem that talks about where they start burning books, people will be burned. And the question is, well, that doesn't make any sense. Just because I burn a book doesn't mean I'm burning people. The idea is very simple. If I burn the books, I burn knowledge. Then if the only thing left with knowledge is the people, and I burn the people, then the only knowledge you get is what I want you to know. For you guys, it makes no difference. You could give a crap if I burned every book. Now, if I threw the Bible in the fire, you might get a little fired up, right? It's just a book. Well, what if I take and I tell you that the internet doesn't exist? And I know the internet actually is useful for things other than naked stuff. Just a heads up on that one. But what if the internet just didn't exist? All the information, all the knowledge, all the stuff that you have at your fingertips on your phone is gone. So take the books, take the internet, all gone. And then you kill the generation of people that actually has any knowledge of what happened before you. What happens? All you know is what the people that are around want you to know. It's a simple manipulation of history. What we're wanting to do here, and what the Germans want to do starting in 1933, is manipulate history. Get rid of all the history that doesn't play along with the way they want the game to be seen. And the only way to do that is to burn the books, kill the information, and then get rid of the people who have knowledge of the way things were before the Germans took over. Now, to make sure you understand this, 85% of the German population were not Nazis. And I'll explain Nazi in a minute. They were not bad guys. They were nationalists. But, however, a large portion of them were involved in the events we're going to talk about. The other thing is that for you guys, I'm going to show you some of the camps, tell you some of the stories, introduce you to some of the people. But at the end of all this, I want you to imagine the situation at hand. Where in a single day, I would walk into Noonan High School, East Coweta, and Northgate, and before I left, there would not be a single living soul. You're dead. Your teeth are pulled if there's anything worth them in there. I burned you down to ash. I grind your bones into fertilizer, and I sell what I can use of your body to make a profit. And I've done that on a Thursday. And then the next day, I go through every middle school, and I wipe out every living person in every middle school. And within 2 weeks, every living soul in the 100,000 that live in Coweta County are dead. And they don't even exist anymore. They are dust. And I'm going to do this for 3 years. By 1943, 80% of the Jews who will die are dead. And when we're talking 80%, you're looking at 4 million people. By the way, it's not just Jews. If you were a person of color, you didn't make it past the first month. If you were handicapped in any way, mentally, physically handicapped, you're liquidated. I kill you. Bullet to the brain. Simple, cheap, and effective. Simply put, I only want the best of the best, and what's left is just waste to me. You are simply judged unwanted, and you are killed. And you know what you can do about it? Nothing. If I knock on your door and I blow your brains all over the wall behind you, too bad. You were chosen unwanting. This is what happens in Germany. 11 million people. So you understand 11 million. There's only 8 million in the entire state of Georgia. To give you a picture of what it looks like, think about a football stadium. The biggest one. Think about the Mercedes-Benz. Fill it up to capacity. That's 70,000 people. Fill it up to capacity. How many times to get to 1 million? 15. And that's only 1 million. Fill that stadium up 125 times and kill everybody you walk through the doors. And now you're talking about the numbers we're looking at. So as you look at this, think about what we're talking about. You think we're violent now? You think the stuff you see on the news is bad and what we do to each other is bad? It is. Human beings only do one thing. We find better ways to kill each other. It's our job. We did it with a rock, we did it with a pointy stick, then we realized we could shoot the stick, and then we realized we could get better ways to do it. We've been killing each other forever. It's what we do. We're literally the only animal in the world that decides it's a good thing to kill each other. Dogs don't kill because they feel like they got a grudge. They do because it's instinct. We choose. And the Germans will choose, the Nazi Party will choose to eliminate 11 million people. Good news is they wanted to kill 34 million. They were stopped before they could. So what I want to do is kind of go through some of this stuff for you guys. And I forget the really nice, this is way too pretty to do a Holocaust lesson with, just so you know. All right, so just so you know, because I don't know what you don't know, this is old Uncle Adolf. So this is Hitler. Hitler takes power in Germany in 1933. Now, he tries early on. There's a whole bunch of stuff to that. But basically, Hitler is going to be a member of what we call the National Socialist Workers' Party. Nazis. Makes it simple. The Nazi Party arises from an economic disaster. 1920s Germany, these people are eating their lawn. The economy's so bad, the money's so worthless, that they're literally going out in their yard, cutting the grass, boiling it and eating it. That's how they're surviving. They are starving to death. And the problem is, if you're starving to death and somebody feeds you, you'll follow them. And you go, that's not true. Think about a dog, right? You got a mutt that lives around the neighborhood, and it doesn't like anybody. And you put food on the porch, and you feed it. Whose dog is it?
Yours.
It's your dog. All right? Because that dog knows you're the one reason it's not dying, and it will probably protect you. Hitler wanted for them to come to him and say, I'm the one thing that can fix all your problems. Weirdly enough, he does not take over the government with guns. He does not take it over with violence. He is elected. He pulls the wool over the people's eyes. They believe everything he tells them, and he's elected. He becomes the leader of Germany, then gets rid of all the other political parties, and Nazism is the only choice. So, again, a couple of quick things. You see some of the guys in the SS. The German people thought he was awesome. 1934, 35, 36, he's fixing the economy. Germany's doing well. Everybody's got a job, but it was a magic trick. So keep in mind that all this stuff is going on. One of the things the Nazis were really good about is their symbols. If you come up into my room, I have a bunch of this stuff, and when I do my display for my other class, I have a whole bunch of this stuff that I've collected over the years. In Germany today, it's illegal. If you're caught with this in Germany, you go to prison because you can't even you really can't call yourself a National Socialist. But this is the Nazi flag, actually designed by Hitler. He was an artist. Not really a good artist, but he was an artist. You have the different kinds of things. The red of the nationalism, the Aryan race with the white and the black of socialism in the flag. Basically, every country, everybody has a flag. And this became kind of the symbol for the Nazis. But they didn't usually use one flag. It was usually 1,000. It was always more and more and more. Now, go back. Sorry. Maybe go back. I don't like your rules. So, let me go back wrong way. All right, one of the other things you do as the beginning of the Holocaust, you guys will have seen this before. The idea is mostly to ostracize, separate you from society. So one of the first things that they do, as we'll talk about some of the laws they pass, is they start forcing the Jews to wear the Star of David. Now, this is one example. Every country Germany takes over, every group has a different looking one. By the way, if you were a political prisoner, if you were a gypsy, and I don't mean like a crystal ball looking gypsy, it was like a race of people. If you fit any other description that wasn't Jewish, but you were considered Sometimes the German word's easier than the English. It's Untermensch in German. Undesirable, unwanted. Basically what they'll do is they want to tag you so that they know who you are. Well, the other thing is that what if you refuse to wear it? Well, that's easy, you're dead. Now early on, that's not what we're doing. Early on, the Germans are not going around shooting people and killing them. Early on, what we're doing with these people is we're rounding them up. We're just organizing them and basically starting to figure out to make sure we keep them all in one area. So I'll talk to you in a minute about how they knew if you were a Jew or not, because that's kind of confusing for you guys. There's a big term you'll read about as you do history classes, as you do night, whatever else, called anti-Semitism or anti-Semitic. The word, it just means anti-Jewish. I'll tell you a little bit about the background of this. This starts centuries and centuries ago. Easiest way to understand it, it's kind of a confusing way, but easy. According to many people, Jews killed Jesus. If you go back biblically, you look at the whole idea of Jesus' crucifixion. You know, we're around Easter, so if you're at church, you might be hearing about that. It is the Jewish Pharisees, the Jewish tax collectors, that gave Christ over to the Romans who killed him. It's a bad interpretation of a story, but hey, if you got to blame somebody, that's blame. The true story is, more than anything else, the Jews were the bankers of the old world and basically kind of made them wealthy, and it upset some of the people that didn't like them so well. We got an anti-Semitic movement. To give you an example of how you start making a group of people hated, this is a board game. You guys have all played board games at some point, Monopoly, whatever else. This is called Judenrass, Jews out. The object of the game for children was to basically get all the Jews that you were stuck with on your board game off your board. In other words, get the Jews out of Germany. And when you win, you get a piece of candy. So you play this in class, you play it at home, and it's just a board game. True. But what are you learning? That the Jews don't need to be in Germany. So what we do is we start to systematically teach early on this anti-Jewish feelings, the anti-Jewish sentiments. The other thing is by 1935, we'll talk about in a minute some of the laws, you start seeing Jews being segregated. Now, we had segregation in America at this time. All right, the same time this is going on in Germany, we lived in a segregated America. This was not uncommon to take a race of people or an ethnicity and segregate them. It was the nature of the beast of what it was in this time period. But you can see this out here from Nach Juden. This is not for Jews. This is for Jews and not for Jews. That's what felt Juden from Nach Juden. You see up at the tops, defend yourself. Don't shop at a Jewish store. Basically, these are protests against anything that in Germany the Jews kind of were involved in. Laws were made. Basically, you have these blood laws that basically says this girl right here, who is what we call, again, it's a German word thing. She is basically a Gentile. She's non-Jewish. What she cannot do is she is not allowed to marry the guy next to her who's Jewish because they produce mixed blood, mislage, mixed up blood. In other words, it makes it illegal for a male and female of the Jewish religion, ethnicity, or faith to have relationships with a German because they don't want what they call kind of mislage, messed up children. In 1938, if you were a Jew, you had to carry what's called a rice pass. This is your pass to go around the country. Imagine your driver's license. But the way this works is you had a passport basically, had a big J stamped on it that told them that you were Jewish, and if they stopped you and you didn't have these papers, you went immediately to prison. It was also a way to keep up with you. Again, it's not just like a driver's license. This is it's kind of a card to where you can live in your own country. 1935, we passed these laws, and those are the ones I was telling you guys about, the blood laws, the ideas of what makes you a citizen, what doesn't. So what do they do in 35? They take all the rights away from the Jews. So now you're not a citizen. You're considered a non-citizen in the country you live in, which means you can't vote, you can't own property, and if you're arrested, guess what you don't get to go to? Court. They simply decide you're guilty or not guilty. So in other words, you basically, once you're arrested, they can do whatever they want to do with you. So what you've done in 1935 is you pretty much have said, all Jews in Germany are not even citizens, they have no rights. If you were a German Jew and they caught you flying the Nazi flag, why in God's name would you fly the Nazi flag if you're a German Jew? Well, at this point, you really don't know how bad things are going to get. Maybe you love Germany. And you go, I'm a German, I'm proud to be a German. Fly, that's the German flag. And they go, no, it's not your flag. So keep in mind, a lot of stuff up here, and I'm just going to use it real quick. What this is a chart. And the chart kind of tells you how to tell who's a Jew. So everybody on this side is okay until you get down here where you see the little black pieces. Anywhere you see the miscellance, the mixing of blood, any of that, we start determining the level of how much of a Jew you are. Anytime you get to the part where you have a half, you are considered a Jew. Now, this goes back 4 to 6 generations. If your great-great-grandfather had Jewish blood, you're a Jew. Now, how do they figure that out? Sometimes it's pretty easy, sometimes it's a little more difficult. Most of the times, Jews lived in small communities. They all went to the same church, to the temple. And when all this started, most of them voluntarily took the Judenpass, the Jewish pass. Most of them voluntarily, basically, everybody knew who they were. Again, they don't know how bad it's going to get. So, okay, too far away. See, too many buttons. I got it. It's fine. So, one of the things that happens, I think I'm going forward, go back. I hate the Chromebook like with a giant, giant passion. Okay. No. So one of the things that happens is, what's the easiest group of people to convince to do stupid things? You. It's a great thing about being young. There's no future. You don't really see. It's why we make really stupid choices. Myself, I never did those things. Basically, you don't see the next day. You see, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to do this. Consequences, we'll figure that out later. So if you're Hitler and you're the Nazis, the best thing to do is get the children. You're not kidnapping. The economy sucks. Things are bad. You create what's called the Hitler Youth. It's basically the Boy Scouts with a whole different creed. So what do? You bring them in. You put them in a little uniform. They march around. They play games. You teach them to build a campfire. They do all kinds of fun stuff. And then at the end of that, the lesson is Hitler is important. The Jews are bad. And you do this for 5 or 6 years. And if you're a girl, you join the Hitler Youth Girls Moots, which is what we call the Deutsche Mädel, the German women's group. And so you're 8, 9, 10 years old, 1926. Come 1940, when the war comes rolling around, you're 25 and in a helmet with a gun. And completely believing that this is the best thing to do. So we basically kind of brainwashed these guys to begin to believe all the ideas of the Nazi group. Now, by 1936, when Hitler's in power, notice the big red line. That's how many boys were in the Hitler Youth. 6 million. Why are there so many? Simple. If you were male and German, you were in the what? You were in the Hitler Youth. It wasn't optional. It's not like the Boy Scouts where you choose. If you were a German boy and you weren't Jewish, you were in the Hitler Youth, whether you agreed or disagreed. So you were kind of forced. All right, and again, same button. One of the other things I like to show, and I'll put this on this week for this year for you guys to have, because you do English. Imagine this is your English class. These are your books. See the book on the left, well, your left, my right. It's called The Poisonous Mushroom. It's a good little bedtime story. So you have the poisonous mushroom up here, and you have the little boy going into the field to pick mushrooms with his grandmother. No, not the kind of mushrooms you get high off of, the kind you put in food, because that would be a whole different story. And as they're picking mushrooms, the kid reaches down to get one. The grandmother goes, "Don't pick that one." He says, "Why not?" She goes, "That one's poisonous." He says, "Well, what's wrong with it?" Well, the story goes on, and she starts explaining to him, "Look at that poison mushroom. Look at all the mushrooms around it. They're all poisoned now. That one screwed the rest of them up." Well, by the end of the book, our little man up here, he realizes that mushroom is really not a mushroom, but it's a Jew. And that Jew has made everyone else around him bad. And the only way to save everyone is to get rid of the Jew. And then everyone will be fine. So what have we taught the little first grader in his book? That the best way to save Germany is to get rid of the what? Get rid of the Jews. And you go, that's an awful story. Yeah. But if you read that your entire childhood, and then the next thing you read is the Hans and Elsa's experience with a stranger, in other words, let me have a little bit of candy from the pedophile, who's a Jew. You go down here and the Jewish trader cheats. The one you can't see is the kid coming up in front of the room and identifying what makes a German beautiful and a Jew ugly. You spend your whole life learning it. You believe it. You think you're bullied? I want you to imagine a place where I take the Jewish kid, stand him in front of the room, and explain every bit of how ugly he is and how beautiful the German is in front of his family and friends and everyone else. Look at his hair. Look at his nose. Look at it. Look how inferior he is to this person. And what do you do about it? Nothing. No one cares. Now, again, I bring the little Jewish boys up, and I humiliate them. I have posters in my class. It's not like we have in here, be respectful and all that. Nope. On the left side, I have the perfect little blonde-haired German. On the right side, I have the ugly little Jew guys. So I make sure that you look around and you know that you're better and superior as a German than you are as a German Jew. Now, here's the other thing. You would think that there would be millions of Jews in Germany. There are less than 500,000. The majority of the Jews that will die are in other countries. But Germany wanted to be Juden-free, Jewish-free. They didn't want any Jews in Germany. 1938, the first time that we see this actually turn out is there's an attack. It's called Kristallnacht, broken glass. And German government basically allows the people to go out and attack German Jewish buildings. They burn their churches. They destroy their businesses. They break into their houses and just beat the crap out of them. And no one is arrested. No one goes to jail. I mean, imagine if someone came in and firebombed your church, burned your church to the ground, kicked the door of your house down and beat your mother, your father, your brother, your sister into a bloody mess. And guess what you can do about it? Nothing. Because you know one of the first things Hitler takes away from all of the citizens in Germany? Guns. Not allowed to own them. You have no repercussion. You simply had to take it. And your mind said, I ain't going to take that. Cool. You're dead. Good job. Well done. And you go, that's not happening to me. Okay, great. You're dead. Believe it or not, they'll just shoot you. And guess who's going to stop them from shooting you? No one. And then if your parents step up and say a word, they shoot them. Or your baby brother. Or sometimes it's just easier to stomp their head with a boot because their head's pretty soft. Simply put, your existence means nothing to me. You are basically worth less than the dogs that I will feed before I feed you. So again, understand, when this stuff begins to happen, no one stands up for these people. No one. In fact, even in other countries, they were like, well, you know, it's just some bad stuff going on. Following this, the German government decides, we got to protect the Jews. By the way, it's a joke. How do we protect you? Well, we don't want this to happen to you again, so what we're going to do is we're going to put you in ghettos. So you guys think of ghetto as a term that you know from here. Not even correct, not even close. Ghetto is an Italian term. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to round you up, put barbed wire around you, and keep you safe. Why am I keeping you safe? It's easy. If I know where you are, it's easy to find you when I want to get rid of you. So I round you up and you go, screw that, I'm running away. Where are you going? You going to run to Poland? They don't want you. France isn't going to take you. Unless you got a lot of money, you ain't getting out. Well, I'm going to go hide. Yeah, they're going to find you. Because somebody's going to tell on you. Because if they don't, what are we going to do to them? I'm going to kill them. And I can promise you, if I put a rope around somebody's neck and hang them in the front yard, the person next door will tell me whatever I want to know. There's no mercy to these people. Now, you can see it with Jews in Krakow being coming up. So 1938-39, we start massive book burnings. And you would think that there would at least be some people who would disagree with this. Unfortunately, this thing became like a party. We've locked the Jews up in the ghettos. We're burning their books. We're destroying their temples. Basically, you're trying to take them out of German society. And then we start proving our point with science. I got to go back. See, I hate this thing. These are all our psychos I'll talk about in a minute. We start proving our point with science. So I start taking a hair sample. I have a little thing. I think there's 29 hair samples. And I walk up next to you and I put it next to your hair and I go, you're a Jew. Just by the way your hair texture is. Does it really work that way? No. Then I look over and I say, all right, let me measure your head. I'd be in trouble with this one. Got a little peanut head. I'd be like, oh, your head's not big enough. Must have Jew blood. You're a Jew. No, I'm not a Jew. I'm not. Well, you know, you look like one, so let's put you over here. All right, look at the distance between your ear and your eye. And if it doesn't meet the standard, you're either Jewish or something's wrong with your blood and we don't want you around. I look at your earlobes and I go, you know what? Your earlobes are attached. That could mean you're a Jew. How do you prove you're not? You try really hard. But if I want you to fall into the realm of somebody I want to get rid of, what do? You fall in that realm. Now, while all this is going on, there's a secret piece happening. And I didn't tell you guys about this last time, but it doesn't get tonight. Mental institutions, prisons, hospitals, those kind of things, I'm simply just liquidating. I'm killing everybody in them secretly. So I go into the mental institution, and what gets you in a mental institution in, say, 1938? Well, obviously, like schizophrenic, bipolar, those kind of things that we medicate today, you're dead. Homosexuality, you're dead. See, that's a disease to them. It's not a choice. For the Germans, it's a disease. You're dead. And you're one of the first to go. If you are mentally or physically, again, disabled, you're gone. What about old people? Hell, you're useless. So what do I do with the old people that cost me money? I put them in what we call relocation centers to help them get along. If there's no family to take care of them, what I do is I say, look, we're going to take care of you. And then Grandma and Grandpa are never heard from again. Oh, they died of natural causes. You know, only a couple of 100,000 of them. They just naturally pass away. So I simply start eliminating anybody of color, anybody that doesn't fit my standard. Well, the other problem is I still have a lot of these Jews to deal with. They're all in the ghettos. They're all there. And so I've got to figure out what to do with all of them. So I get these guys. Again, you got to go back. This thing's terrible. You have to stand there, and I'm going to stand here. Just go back. Just up arrow. Oh, no, that's forward.
I know. I have to
Go back one more. I like my stuff.
How far?
No, go forward. I should probably come over. Forward. Forward. One more. Halt and see. Now you did it again.
Okay.
All right, so who's doing all this? Well, you would think it was monsters, right? You would think you would find these pictures of guys that were with a hockey mask or burnt from like Freddy Krueger or Jason or some other crap. Those movies are not that scary. Mainly due to the fact that the scariest people in the world look like everybody else. That's what freaks me out. You know, like one of the movies I think is the scariest movie ever. You guys ever see Silence of the Lambs? The movie freaks me out because the guy looks just like everybody else. He's talking about eating people. And you think that could be the guy standing in the grocery store with me and you're sitting there buying some hamburger and he's thinking how delicious you would be on a bun. That freaks me out. All right, that just completely freaks me out. When you look at these guys, you think they don't really look like monsters. They are. The guy in the top left is the minister of propaganda. He's the guy that brings it all to the eyes and ears. The guy here on the top right, Reinhard Heydrich, his nickname was the Heydrich the Hangman. His favorite thing to do was to personally watch in concentration camps as they hung prisoners because he loved the sound of their neck snapping. He kind of enjoyed it. The guy down here on the bottom, Hermann Goering, was in charge of the Air Force and also signed the death warrant for the 34 million Eastern Europeans. Adolf Eichmann was in charge of the trains. His job was to make sure the trains ran on time. Where do the trains all end up? In the camps. When he's captured in 1960, 15 years after the war, he says, "I will die happily knowing that 4 million Jews died while I was working." 4 million. And we talk about people killing one or two. Rudolf Hess, Heinrich Himmler, all of these guys are guys that are involved in the systematic eradication of a race. Go ahead. So, how does it start? We round them up. First thing we do to make it easier, you don't have to read my stuff. One of the easy ways to do it is to put them in a church. Had them all at temple. So Saturday is the Sabbath for the Jewish religion. They go in, they go to temple, and you lock the doors and set the building on fire. And all of them burn to death in the church. So 700 or 800 of them are gone. And if they run out, you machine gun them as they run out. Who stops you from doing it? No one, because the government's told you to do it. Well, if that doesn't work, go ahead. If that doesn't work, we got to come up with a different way. So we start trying to figure out ways as the German extermination squad to get rid of the Jews. Now, right now, we're not invading Poland. We haven't started the war. This is kind of early on. So we start moving them out of ghettos into concentration camps for their own protection. They're labor camps, forced labor. So we cut their food intake. We work them pretty hard. Well, then the war begins in 1939. Hitler invades Poland. After 1939, we've just inherited another 2.6 million Jews. There are 3.3 million Jews in Poland. You have 500,000 in Germany. Basically what you're looking at is by 1939, 1940, there's about 11 million plus Jews that Germany now has to deal with. They refer to it as a storage problem. We have all these Jews and nowhere to store them. What are we going to do with them? Well, what they decide to do with the Jews is not store them, but kill them. It's just easier to kill them because if we kill them and get rid of them, we don't have to put them anywhere. Work them to death, gas them, we'll figure it out. So the first things they do, go one more, I'll come back to this picture in a little bit, is this. This is called Einsatzgruppen. This is mobile killing squads. Simple. I take you out somewhere on the edge of town, and I shoot you. And I don't just shoot the men. I shoot the women. I shoot the children. Sometimes it's not even worth shooting the kids. It's easier just to bayonet them. And what do the people in town do about this? Nothing. Because if they're not Jewish, they don't want to be standing next to these people. So I go into a town somewhere on the edge of Germany. This is Berdyshev. And I basically just round up all the Jews. Well, how do I know where they are? I've already told you. They're in ghettos, or they're in the little concentration camp I've already put them in. And I walk them to the edge of town, again, and I shoot them. Well, that's disgusting and dirty. And it's expensive. Bullets are not cheap. Plus, kind of takes a toll on the guy shooting people. After you just line up a bunch of old people and young people and women and children and you kill them, you start feeling bad about it, even if you're a German Nazi. Well, then I decided what I want to do is make it a little more humane, because, I feel really bad about killing all these people. So I introduced the Hell Van. You ever seen Jeepers Creepers? Kind of looks like this. What's the Hell Van? Well, it's exactly what you would think. I put the Jews in the back of it, and I run the exhaust into the van instead of out of the van. And I turn it on, and I suffocate you. and you die from carbon monoxide poisoning, which is really not that painful, but not fun. Well, go ahead. Problem with the hell van was pretty simple. It was less efficient than this. So we go back from the hell van, because it's expensive in gas, to this. Now, the other thing that we got to remember is we need to make a little money off this project. So I take all these women and all these men and I strip them. And I'm not stripping them to be naked because I like naked people. I want their clothes. Now, when I finish shooting them, I'm going to go cut their hair because I want the hair. The hair can be used for all kinds of stuff. The bodies are actually pretty useful because I can take the bodies, and if I do them right and I render them just correctly, I can boil the fat off of you and make soap out of it. And I can sell the soap. Again, I can make about 200 Reich marks, about $200 off every dead body, just the pieces that I can use. And if I'm really good, I can skin the body, tan the flesh, and make, well, and make what amounts to human leather out of it that I could use to bind books, coffee tables, furniture. You know, I can do a lot of things with your body. So I figure out ways to make money. But early on, this is the way I do it. The van's too expensive, costs too much gas, so why not take them to a ravine, strip them down, and shoot them? Well, what about burying them? It's easier to find a big ravine to shoot them and drop them in, and then just take a bulldozer and dump some dirt on them. Now, by the way, what happens if you don't die the first time we shoot? Well, I walk around and finish. I don't want you laying there alive. Keep going. So, you see the guy up here right at the top? He's pretty well accepting his fate. By the way, who dug that grave? He did. So the guys over here are digging their own graves. Raise your hand if you would dig. If somebody said dig your own grave, if you would dig it. Yeah, you would. You know why? If I put a gun to your head and said dig, what's your question? What's your answer? How deep, sir? Yeah, either that, one of two things happen. You say, you're going to shoot me anyway, I ain't digging. Or you say, they say dig, and you say, how deep would you like it, sir? On the hope that they may not what? If somebody points a gun and says jump, your response should be, how high? And how many times? Most of these guys simply said, you know, maybe I'll be alive a little longer, I don't know. But pretty much, I mean, imagine digging your own grave. The other thing is a lot of forced labor. If we're not killing you right away, we're working you to death. And when I mean, you go, I won't work. Well, cool, we'll put you in that hole. I mean, this is pretty simple. You know, unfortunately, the outcome of this is almost always the same. Go ahead. So, 1943, war's going. Those killing methods are a waste of time and effort. A bunch of the Nazi upper-ups meet at a place called Wannsee. And what do they decide? Well, they need to decide what to do with the Jews. So 13 men sit around a table and discuss how to eliminate 34 million human beings. Now imagine 13 guys sit around a table, having lunch, smoking, drinking, having a conversation on how to murder 34 million people. And at the end of the day, they discover, go ahead, they discover the easiest way to do it is to lock them up in these camps, execute the ones that they feel like executing on the way that are a problem, sometimes in the woods, what they call the little woods. Go ahead. Sometimes you put them on the edge of the ravine and you shoot them. But all of this is a problem. Because look at all the camps we have in the areas we now control. We've taken France, we've taken Poland, Germany's ours, Yugoslavia's ours. The problem is we really don't want death camps in Germany. So every camp you see in the German proper, in the German land, is basically a concentration camp. It is a work camp. Everything you see in Poland that is in red is a death camp. They're ovens, crematoriums, gas chambers. And all these other ones, Dachau, Flossenburg, Buchenwald, Nordhausen, all these, they're labor camps. You will slowly die there. Eventually, if you can't work, they ship you on the train out to one of those places. Go ahead. Now, the extermination camps. So you arrive. Go one more. I'm going to go past that one. Yeah, let's go there. So you arrive at, let's say, Auschwitz. We'll pick that. It's one you know. And when you guys do night, you'll be talking about Auschwitz. Okay. You get off the train. And when you get off the train, say it's in the middle of the night, and it's freezing freaking cold. This is in literally the foothills of cold Central Europe. You have all your clothes that you brought with you because when they brought you in, they've lied to you. You're wearing your boots and your pants and your overcoat, and you know you're clothed. And so you come off the train, and it's dark, spotlights, dogs, guards everywhere. And you're walking, and let's say, you know, my wife works here, and I have my wife and my 2 kids. So we're walking, and you know, we're kind of watching. The guards are kind of herding us up, and we get to right here at the end of the ramp. And they look at me, and they go, I think he could work. So they send me to the left. So I go to the left into this line, and my wife and kids are over here, and I'm, Well, those kids can't help us. They're not good for it. We don't really need them. And she doesn't look like she can do much work. She stays on that side. And they basically say, we're going to take the people that we don't feel like are strong enough over here, get them some help, lying. And you guys are going to go to work. Never see them again. Straight from the train to the gas chamber. They don't shave their head. They don't tattoo them. They do nothing. They walk them down. Tell them they're going to get showers. Tell them to strip down. Hang their clothes on a hook with a number. And say, remember your number, because when you come out on the other side, your clothes are going to be on that side. And we're going to clean them up and delouse them. Got the lice out. They walk you in, and then the lights go out and the gas comes on. Because what they begin to realize is what's called Zyklon B is a better killer than bullets and machine guns. It's a pesticide. They turn into a gas. Well, how does it work? Imagine someone reaching down your throat and pulling your lungs out while you're alive and you feel it all. You bleed out every opening in your body, your eyes, your ears, your rear end, your nose, your mouth. Basically, it feels like someone is ripping you apart from the inside out, and it takes about 20 minutes to die. Imagine 20 minutes of the most excruciating pain ever. And you're dead. And when you die, they come in and they take your bodies. They go out the back door and somebody comes in with a hose and they wash the floors of the chamber off and they pull the fingernails out of the walls where you scratched your fingernails out trying to get out of the walls. And they clean them up a little bit, throw a little bleach on it, they bring the next group in. You go out the back door, they hose all the crap off of you, shave your head, pull the teeth, whatever they use is useful on you. If you got rings, they'll cut your finger off, take the ring. And then they run you right into the crematorium. 5,000 degrees later, you're dust. They're burning so many bodies that it looks like it's snowing when you arrive on those trains. You look up and think it's snowing, and it's the ash coming out of the furnaces where they're burning bodies. As many as 10,000 a day. What you're looking at on here is a couple of things. It didn't matter if you were a child or an adult. Those down there on the side, those are bags of hair. Well, what do you do with hair? Well, you bag it up, and you can make mattresses out of it. You can make wigs out of it. You can do all kinds of stuff. You sell it. Over in the top part, you got the barracks. I'll talk about that in a minute. I actually added this for you guys this year. This is a bowl from Auschwitz. If you're not gassed when you arrive, they give you a bowl. And the bowl is life. The bowl is where you put your food. The bowl is the only way you eat. Now, the problem with that is there are no restroom facilities. They don't care how you live. You live like animals. So what do? When you go through the line, that bowl has your number on it. So now you're tattooed, you're shaved. You're in those pajamas. Now they've taken your other clothes. By the way, it's usually about 35 degrees, usually colder, and you're basically in a nightgown with no shoes. The food you get is potato soup, mostly potato peels boiled down, maybe some greens. If you're lucky, there's worms in it. That's protein. A lot of times they put turpentine in the soup to make you sick, dysenteric, so you poop blood. But you're dying slowly. They're working you to death. When you're done eating your meal out of the bowl, you take the bowl back to your barracks. It's your pillow. You lay it on the bed. It's what you lay your head on. When you have to go to the bathroom, it's your bathroom. You use that bowl as your bathroom. And you rinse it out with your urine, and then you go to the line and get your food the next day. And you go, there's no way in hell I'm doing that. Fine, die. Starve to death. They don't care. You understand that all this is about basically taking you from being a human being to not being a human. Go ahead. Don't do what you're told, I'll just hang you. And I don't do it quietly and privately, and I don't care if you're a child, a woman, or other. I simply bring you up in front of everyone else in the camp, and I hang you. And that may not seem like a bad way to die, it's an awful way to die. Because you don't die instantly the way they did it. And a regular hanging, short drop, quick stop. You drop, neck breaks, good, done. They're going to sit there, and you're going to sit there and hang and slowly strangle to death over a matter of, a couple of minutes. Sometimes they'll hang you up there for a little while, get you to the edge of death, cut you down, start you over. It's all a game to them. And again, it doesn't matter. You guys that are in here that are freshmen, that kid right there is 13 years old. He is next in line. He is next. The girl that's hanging is 17. She refused to have sex with the Germans, so they hung her. After they all raped her. And then what are you going to do about it? Nothing. Go. This is called the Black Wall. When they decided to punish inmates for doing wrong things and they wanted to do it publicly, instead of doing it in the chamber, we could hang you or we could take you to the Black Wall. Strip you down, turn your back, and blow your brains out against the wall. Again, the purpose of all this, the purpose of all this is to kill you. Now, if you survived any of this and they registered you, this is when you got the tattoo. This is when they shaved you and cleaned you up. This was basically making you cattle. So a guy like El Wiesel who does night, this is what he's going to be able to go through. He's going to survive that selection process is what they call it. And he's going to go through, because he had something to offer. He was healthy enough to work. Go ahead. Now, you see some of the way they look like when they arrive. See the guy here in the robe? He's a priest, all right? He's not a Jew. He's a priest. But he spoke out against the Nazis, so he goes to the camp with the rest of them. Here's your good example, if you think you know hunger. This photo's taken when these guys arrive in camp. They're already skinny because they're, a little bit hungry. The Nazis decided to do an experiment to see what you could get, how much work you could get off somebody, and what it would look like if you had somebody try to survive on 200 calories a day. Let me explain 200 calories a day. Okay, you guys ever like the miniature Snickers? Like you get a full Snickers bar, right? But then you get like not the little bitty tiny, but like the middle, like a half a Snickers bar. That's 200 calories. But you have to understand that calories in that little half a Snickers bar has peanuts for protein. It has sugar. I'm just talking straight calories. Go ahead. 6 weeks later, same group, those that survived. This is what it looks like. Go back. No, back to the original. This is where we start. This is where we finish. This is what it looks like for the men that survived for 6 weeks on 200 calories a day. They keep the process up. Every one of these guys simply starve to death slowly. Their body eats itself. When you begin to starve your heart, and you're basically the way your body works in starvation, it's pretty simple. Your brain knows it has to save what matters. So it starts shutting things down that it doesn't need. That's why it takes and eats all the fat off your arms and your legs. Your stomach blows up because it fills with gas, but eventually it drops in. It'll shut down your kidneys first. You go into renal failure, then you go into liver failure, and basically you die. So that's kind of the way it works. Your brain's going to shut everything down until it gets to itself. Go ahead. This is the entrance to Flossenburg. You can see the big eagle and the Nazi thing. And behind those gates, this is what's there. These are actual survivors on the bottom and top, photographs that were taken when they were liberated. These are the men at the top who did not make it. I want you to notice that the people in the bottom and these guys, there's nothing to them. They're just bone. Keep going. This is a sketch that was done by a Holocaust survivor of what they witnessed at Auschwitz. I want you to look under the boot of the German soldier. That is a child. Now, if I had my TV in my room, I could blow it up like I usually do with this one. You guys, probably can't read the belt buckle. It's a German eagle, and on the belt buckle, it says, Gott mit uns. God is with us. On the German belt buckles, and I got a set of 12 of them I bring into my World War II class that I have. Beautiful silver, good-looking German belt buckles, except for the whole Nazi thing on them. And across the top of it, right above the swastika, it says, Gott mit uns. God is with us. Kind of a weird thing to say, God is with us, as I'm stepping on a child, isn't it? This is the gas chamber. You can see when we liberate, we take a bunch of pictures. Obviously, you see the blood and stuff that pools at the bottom. What you can't see, and I can blow it up usually, on the back wall, there's scratches in the concrete where people were scratching to try to get out. This is what it looks like when you empty the chamber. By the way, look at the people who are emptying the chamber. What are they? They're Jews. They're called Sonderkommando. They're Jews who are like trustees in a prison. The only reason they're alive and they actually get extra food rations is they're willing to do the dirty work. Drag the bodies out, put them in the ovens. Drag the bodies out, put them in the ditches. By the way, what eventually happens to those two guys? They go to the chamber. Go ahead. This is, and I can see this. This is the guy that wrote your book. This is El Weasel right here tonight. This is Herman Feder. Herman Feder I met 15 years ago at a Holocaust thing I went to up in D.C. He was in 7 different concentration camps, ended up at Auschwitz at one point, but never dies because he makes really good boots. He was a cobbler, not a guy that makes pies. He makes boots. And the German officers loved the boots, and so he worked for a bunch of German officers until they were done with him. They sent him off to die. Luckily, the reason you guys are reading tonight, there's 3 books of that, Night, Dawn, and Day, is that he survives this. You guys can see the bowls I talked about. Now, I also want you to understand, if you're one of the guys on the bottom of the bunks, okay, how many of you guys have seen bunk beds? Bunk beds have a mattress, right? Okay, take the mattress off. Just the slats. You know what I mean? Like just the wooden slats. That's your bed. Just like a wood, like a pallet. Remember what I told you about these people, what they're eating? They're sick all the time. So if the guy in the top is Musliman, expendable, useless, He's dysenteric. In other words, he's got bloody diarrhea he can't control because he's dying. Or he's sick, vomiting because of what he's been eating. If any of that happens to him in the middle of the night, it goes down through his bunk and onto you and onto everybody else. And you're covered in it. These people are covered in feces and urine and everything else. And you would think, God, there'd be rats. There are no rats. They eat them. If their rat comes in that barrack, that rat will not make it out. They're starving to death. Cannibalism occurs. We don't talk much in the Holocaust about cannibalism, but when people are starving to death, their mind goes. It happens. But basically, these people would go through the line with the bowl, and he died 3 days ago. And you and I are holding him up. We got our hands underneath him holding his bowl, so he goes through the line, he gets his portion of the soup. He's dead. So what are you and I doing? We're splitting his soup. And we're going to carry him through the line until he starts to stink and look rotten, and they recognize we're carrying the dead guy through the line. There are guys that die 4 or 5 days. They're walking them through the soup line. They've been dead for a week. But all these people look so awful and horrible that they're not really looking at them. They just dump it when the bowl sticks out. And so if a hand comes out with a bowl, they're just putting mush in it. These are rings taken off prisoners, and these are clothing. Now what's incredible about this, and I didn't have the little caption on this, the rings and the clothes, this is 1 week's collection at Auschwitz at the peak of execution. Every one of those rings and all those clothes were taken away from prisoners in 1 week at Auschwitz. Everything you see there represents someone who was gassed and executed. This is a pit right outside of Bergen-Belsen. Basically, Bergen-Belsen did not have gas chambers, did not have ovens, and so they were basically using giant pits. They would kill them and just dump them in the pits, and this is when we liberated and saw them. And you can see the ovens, the remains that are left in the ovens. You just keep going, I'll take the stuff. Same thing. These are some of the Jews up there, prisoners loading the ovens. This one is I think this is at Ravensbrück. You can go ahead. And Dachau. The top was Dachau. These are American. Go back one. These are American soldiers at the end. So when we liberate Germany, and there's a question that teachers even ask us sometimes, why we didn't do anything to help these people when we kind of knew it was happening. 1944, 43, we go into Italy. But it wasn't really until 1944 that we're invading Europe to go rescue these people. By 1942 February, only 2 out of every 10 Jews that were going to die are dead. 1942. In 1943, 1 year later, 8 out of every 10 Jews that will die are already dead. By 1943, of the 6 million Jews, of the 11 million that will die, more than 80% of them are already dead. So literally the last couple years of the war, it was just what was left over. Now, what you see happen here is at the end of the war, we find these camps. We are not kind. One of my World War II vets who's passed away liberated Dachau, and he actually had a Luger pistol, German pistol, officer's pistol. And I asked him, and I said, "Now, Mr. Cook, where'd you get the pistol?" He said, "Well, I took it off the guard at Dachau." And I said, "Oh, have you ever shot it?" He said, "Well, just once." And I said, "When?" He goes, "When I took it from him." I said, "Okay." So the years went by. I knew him for years and years and years. Finally, one day we were having this long conversation. I said, "Tell me the story." And he tells me this horrible story about what he saw at Dachau and the horrible nature of what the torture chambers and the things he saw. And he said, "Me and another guy took the guy down in the woods, and I shot him." He said he didn't need to be put on trial. He was an animal, and like an animal, we put him down. He goes, "And I kept his gun." And I'm good with that. I was like, I'm good with that too. But what happens is when we find these camps, there's a lot of Germans around that are not military that claim they didn't know the camps existed. So you know what? Hell, let's show them. We declare martial law, and we bring all the citizens in and around these camps in to clean the camps up, to pick up the dead bodies, to bury the Jews. And we force them to recognize and see what they say they didn't know happened. Go ahead. So you'll see a couple of images of liberation. You keep going. There's American tanks coming in, forcing the German women of this town here near Innsbruck to go in and pull the Jewish bodies out of the pit. Some of these bodies were just mush. These are American medics opening up a train car at Dachau. And when the Germans realized we were about to win the war, they locked a bunch of the Jews in trains, just left them. They all suffocated, starved. Some of them they just machine gunned. Some they kicked it back into those barracks where the beds were and just set them on fire. They just tried to kill as many as they could as they were leaving. This is a group, right there is good. This is no, you're fine. This is a colorized photo when they went in of the Soda Commando, 2 of those, and then a British doctor who was posing, and they were showing how they would load the ovens. You can keep going. Mass grave, a lot of these are just mass graves, places that they were showing some of the burial. I'll tell you when to stop. Same thing. Hold it right there. This is one of the barracks that the Americans discovered where the Germans basically just locked all the Jews in and set the barracks on fire. Every one of these bodies you see up here, this is this is Mauthausen, it's the mountain camp. This is Mauthausen. All of these bodies were basically pulled out and laid out. This was one day's killing at Mauthausen. This is what they did the day before we liberated the camp. And you can see Allied soldiers, same thing. And you can see even on the bottom, on the right side, it did not matter how old you were. I mean, those are babies. For them, a Jewish baby eventually grows up into a Jewish adult, and we don't want any of that. You see just some of the different stuff. You can keep going. That's in Austria. Kind of a colorized forced them to bury. I'd usually do a little more of this, but I want to get to something else. These are some of the guys that were liberated. Most of these guys that, if you look that bad, this is Dachau, you may or may not survive. I can't feed you. The reason is once we liberate, if I feed you, you'll die. Because if I feed you, your stomach will explode. And like you see the guy up there, his stomach's kind of blown up a little bit. That's the gas that kind of goes in there when you're starving. What we have to feed them is basically you do what kind of amounts to like small little milkshakes. And then they go from that to something else. No solid food, no fruits, nothing major. And it takes about 1.5 years for these people to actually eat real food. Because their body just can't figure it out. The gentleman that's coming to my class on the 10th, he was a POW in Germany for 2 years. He was a bomber pilot. He weighed 168 pounds as an American soldier when he was shot down. He weighed 98 pounds when he was liberated. He's 6 foot tall, and he weighed 98 pounds when he was rescued from POW camp. These guys right here probably weigh in the 65 to 70 pound range, and they could be as tall as 5'7" to 6 feet tall. Go ahead. And you can see some of the barracks where we liberate. Now the picture up at the top, you see the guy's face that looks burned. One of the things that we found out later, and again, these are all real, they look almost alien, is that places like Auschwitz, they were doing experiments. They would burn people, purposely burn them, to see how long they could survive burn, to see how long before infection set in. They would saw your leg off and his leg off and sew your legs to each other to see if you could actually make it work. And none of this with anesthesia, no painkillers, they just did it. For women that were pregnant, they would strap their legs together with a belt and watch and see if they could give birth with their legs strapped together. And there's lots worse. Cold water testing, altitude testing, injecting needles into your eye to see if they can change eye color. Testing on twins. If they could get a hold of German twins, they love that because I torture the crap out of one of them and see if the other one feels it. Just sick stuff. Just insanely sick things. Go ahead. But you can see some of the survivors here. Last year I had a woman who came in who was a Holocaust survivor that spoke to my class, and I had her speak to the school. She had 17 members of her family captured. She was the only survivor. She watched her brother, mother, father, sisters, cousins all either go to the chamber or be executed right in front of her at 9 years old. And she survived it because she was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jew, and she was able to hide amongst them. Go ahead. This is a nice little understanding, give you percentages. The number is the percentage of Jews that were killed against the total. So if there's 100%, if there were 100 Jews in France, which is the one over here that's 2, out of every 100 Jews in France, we know that between 2 and 34 died. It's kind of a weird. France was difficult. In Germany, 8 out of every 10 Germans were executed. Jews were executed. Over here in this area, which is Czechoslovakia, you see 70% there in Poland. What's not on this map is a place called Estonia and Latvia, 97 and 99%. Estonia was Juden-free, Jew-free by 1941. In Poland alone, 3.3 million Jews. That's how many Jews you had in Poland, 3.3 million. When the war ended, you had less than 300,000. At Chelmino concentration camp, 486,000 Jews went through that camp, 2 survived. At Auschwitz, 1.6 million people went through Auschwitz, 7,000 survivors. Think about if I gave you $1.6 million and I took it away and left you with 7,000. Go ahead. These are your numbers. Treblinka, Auschwitz, Belzec, you see all the different numbers of the 3 major extermination camps in Poland in just 3 camps, 2.5 million people. Again, think about it in terms of money. So, poems that you're in English class. First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists. I did not speak because I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. In the end of all this, the Germans did nothing. We can go one more. The Germans did nothing. Why? Go ahead. Should be it. I'm thinking. I don't think I put anything else on there.
Yeah, but
I did.
it's not going.
So I think that's it. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
In the end, why don't the Germans do anything? They're afraid. If you're a good German and you think, these people should not be treated this way, and you speak out, what do? You die. And again, if I have a wife and kids, I'm going to keep my mouth shut. The bottom line is when you read Night, that's where we go off. When you read Night, I want you to understand this isn't a comic book. This isn't a movie. It's kind of like, I play video games. I play, my son and I play Rainbow Six Online. I play all the Call of Duty crap. The good news in those games is when you get shot, you're like, holy crap, and you go hide, and it goes a little red, and you wait for a few minutes, and then you're good. And there are guns everywhere to pick up. The reality is in stuff like this, when you're shot, you die. And nobody gets better generally. Could something like this ever happen again? It already is. It's happening in 3 or 4 places in the world right now, and nobody cares. In Africa and the Sudan, places like Darfur, 10,000 a day are dying. Basically, even in places like North Korea, you're seeing some of this stuff go on. People have always done this to each other. This just happens to be one of the worst. In the end of it, Hitler wanted a Jewish-free Europe. His idea was to kill all the Jews. In basically 5 years, he killed 6 million Jews and 5 million other people. By the way, none of that is counting any of the people that died in the war. I teach a World War II class. 1939, the war starts. 1945, it ends. 60 million dead. That's not including the 20-plus million that were going to die in China in a civil war that happens. Between 1939 and 1953, about 100 million dead. Again, this is one of the huge, most awful atrocities in human history. Here's the fun part about it. Again, when you read it, it's just a story. But it's a real story. It's real lives. And the people who survived this survived one of the most horrific things in human history. If you ever get a chance to meet one, and I've got another survivor coming next year, take the opportunity to hear their story because they're going away. My youngest World War II veteran, coming next week, or a week after spring break, is 94 years old. My oldest is 101. I had 52 World War II vets that came when I first started teaching the class. I have 6. The rest I've buried. Their stories are going away. The youngest Holocaust victims right now are in their late 80s, early 90s, and they were children of the Holocaust. Again, why? Well, because people just didn't do anything about it. But as you read the book, it's really a good book. I know you guys are like, I hate reading. Well, sometimes you read because it's you have to, but sometimes you should read because it's what you should do. So, all right, any questions? If I don't know answers, I'll make it up. I'm good at that. Now you guys all want to go have a sandwich, don't you? Feel bad about eating your food.
Can you explain that to them? Because they, about why they were starving. What was the soup like that they got?
Depending on where you were, most of the time, if you're in somewhere like Netweiler, what you're getting is basically potato peels boiled in hot water potato peels, greens, and greens could be anything that was leafy and green. You got coffee, which was mostly they took the bark off trees and grinded it up and made water the color of coffee. No sugar, no meat, nothing with any kind of stuff. At Auschwitz, it's basically mush, cabbage. A lot of times they really like cabbage. You boil the cabbage till it's just hot, wet, watery cabbage soup. And then they would take like little bottles like this of turpentine, like paint thinner, and pour it in the soup just to keep you weak and sick. If they were mad at you, they just didn't feed you. Sometimes you get bread, but it was black bread, which means they would take, say, 70% of the bread is sawdust. The other 30% is actually flour, and that flour is probably mealy, wormy. When it's fresh and they bake it, it's like putty. When it gets hard and it's old, I could beat you to death with it. And most of them couldn't eat it, so they just put that and put the potato peel soup or whatever else they would give them over the top. At Birkenau, which was the women's camp, they put all the food in a big 55-gallon drum and would let the dogs eat out of the drum and have the Jews stand behind it and wait for the dogs to finish, then they would feed the Jews. Anything else?
Did any of the survivors you ever talk about the weather conditions?
Yeah, one of the things, the reality was they were always freezing. You're talking at, okay, so say if you're, and I'd go back to the map, say if you're at Theresienstadt. Theresienstadt is in like the foot of the Alps. In the wintertime, you're getting 8, 10, 12 feet of snow. So I want you to imagine 8, 10, 12 feet of snow, how cold it is. and you're basically in a nightgown with no shoes. So these people get frostbite. Frostbite turns necrotic, the flesh dies, then you get an infection and you die. So weather was a problem. If it's in the summertime, if you're like Natweiler, it gets really hot, and they had a big mosquito population, and so malaria, typhus, whatever. The other thing that's kind of interesting about it, and if you, with weather, is that the places that had the coldest weather, weirdly enough, had the least amount of disease, because bacteria and stuff doesn't do well in the cold, but had high death rates from exposure. So, yeah. Okay, go ahead. If you let it. I always tell, my big thing that I tell students all the time is if you ignore things that people are doing, yeah. The good news is where you live, no. The reason I don't think it could ever happen here is we have a constitution, we have a government, we have all these other things in place, and hopefully common sense would play out. But like I said, right now in places, I could see, this sounds awful, but I could see somewhere like Venezuela, which is falling apart right now because the government's just a class 5 crap storm. And I mean, the government's cut the lights out on the people. I could see places like that having, not really going after a race of Jews or that, but basically starting to liquidate people that didn't believe. It happened with the Cambodians under a guy named Pol Pot 30 years ago. Mao, who was a leader in China, killed like 25 million of his own people. I mean, he was having babies thrown in incinerators because he didn't want female babies. So, you know, dictators and leaders take over and people follow. And the worst part is all these guys that are arrested at the end when they're put on trial, you know what their answer is? I didn't do anything wrong. I was just following orders. I was just doing what I was told, whether it's right or wrong. So, but I would hope not. Good news is most of the time it takes a pretty severe event for this to go on. But so I don't know. Yes, sir.
Have you ever talked to a German soldier?
Yeah, I have. I've interviewed 3 former German soldiers, none that were involved in this because any of the guys that were actively involved in something like this died. We helped them. But I've talked to former Wehrmacht, just standard foot soldiers, German soldiers, 2 of which actually came and moved here, became American citizens. They weren't Nazis. They didn't involve themselves in the Holocaust. They were just soldiers. And were actually some of the best American citizens you ever want to meet. And they said when they were young boys, they were the Hitler Youth, and they believed the rhetoric. And when they were 18, they joined the military, and they were sent to fight, and they were fighting for Germany. But eventually they kind of realized they kind of lied to. The other one I interviewed was in the German Navy, and so all his stuff was done. He was a submarine guy. His stuff was done off the coast. But yeah, I met 3 German soldiers. I've talked to Russian soldiers, French soldiers, Danish. All of them basically, you know, they were fighting for their countries. Just kind of like, but like I said, most of your German army is not Holocaust pushing Nazis. They're just soldiers. They're just Germans. Many of them knew what was going on, but there's nothing they can do about it. So, unfortunate but true. Get them back.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Can we
Have a good spring break.
Cypher, please come take your camera.
Yeah,
I don't know how.
Same button in the middle.